Uh,
Excellent. Yeah, so we are recording. Just a FYI, we're going to provide a playback in case you needed to go back to anything here. Thanks, Dennis, for that introduction. Brandon, why don't you take a moment, introduce yourself?
yeah, so I'm Brandon. Planted a church in fall of 2019, which is a great time to begin a new church. So the last few years have been full of all kinds of challenges, and Michael and Dennis have been very much there to help us as we're trying to connect with our community, raise awareness that we're even here, and champion moments like Easter and Christmas to create a win for our church, but also gathering people within our community not connected to church into our church. And we've just seen a lot of success, and they asked me to be here and kind of share a little bit of our story. So thanks for having me, Michael and Dennis.
Yeah, glad you're here for sure. So we wanted to basically present from a couple different perspectives. One is that Dennis and I are both part of Church World, have been part of Church World, communications director, that type of thing. Now we have our own businesses that serve the church. So we'll provide some insights from kind of an expertise standpoint when it comes to branding and marketing, that type of thing. And then Brandon will provide a voice to hopefully represent the pastors that are on this call. Like Dennis said, our heart's to really help advance the kingdom by providing you with great insights of, hey, how do we do ministry today with everything that we have available digitally? Dennis has a great passion for this. I'm excited for you to just kind of hear some of his thoughts behind it. I'm going to share my screen, and then we'll jump right into our content here for today. I want to honor your time. Overall, we'll be done by 1 o'clock, or sorry, it's Eastern time. So we'll be done within an hour. Let me just say it that way. We'll be done in the next 55 minutes. But for the next 30 minutes, we're just going to share as much value as we can. I'm going to share my screen. Dennis is going to share his screen as well. And then there's a Q&A at the end. So most of that time is just Q&A to answer your questions so we can help you double your attendance. Like that's the hope of this webinar. We want to help you double your attendance for Easter. Whatever you're seeing on a regular basis, we hope that Easter this year can be doubled. In fact, that's a great starting off point while I kind of get my screen set up. Hey, Brandon, why don't you tell us about your experience as you've gone through this process with us now for the last couple of years? What have you seen?
Yeah, so Michael and Dennis presented to me a playbook over the last couple of years of promotion, creating an awareness that we're having an Easter service, creating some events on the day that will cause people to come to our church. But then what we've found to be the most successful is what we're communicating on Easter, trying to get people who visit on Easter to actually come back. So our experience in the last 2 years has been we've actually had more than 200% growth on Easter Sunday. But our retention has been great the last couple of years as we've just run this playbook for how to make people aware that Easter is going to be great at our church and a great series to follow. So last year, I think it was 260% of our regular attendance we saw on Easter. And you look at our attendance records each week after that, you really can see that Easter was a major catalyst into the next season of growth, where we actually grew over the summer as a result of what happened on our Easter services.
So our hope is that we'll lay out not only a plan for Easter leading up to Easter, Easter itself, and then after Easter, because the heart of this is not just to get a bunch of people to show up on Easter, but how do we get them to come back and then ultimately to take next steps to join the church, whatever that looks like for your church. So on my screen, this is our outline today. This is a playbook that we put together for Easter. We want to walk you through this playbook. We've used this a lot of times for many churches to help them walk through this process. So let's jump right in. So the first part of this playbook is that we want us to begin planning Easter. So I can't tell you how many times I've been on church staff, I've been there before, we jump into Easter prep without actually planning. So let's just pause. This sounds very obvious, but let's just ask some questions. Like, what is the win for this Easter? Like, let's just think about that. Like, we should, it kind of sounds like of course we should know that, but let's just pause and as a team collectively figure what that is for this year. Who is the target audience for this Easter? And I think spiritually, everyone should be the answer, and we probably all agree with that. But as we think about our promotions and what we're putting together, our communications, who really is the target? Who do you want to speak to this year at Easter? Okay, what is the call to action for our promotions? Is it a QR code that takes them to a landing page on the website? Is it to sign up for something? Is it just to show up at any of our service times? Let's just think through that. Again, let's just pause at the beginning. And of course, we a lot of times we overlook some of these details, but let's not do that. Let's just make sure we have it in line. How does the event support the mission of our church? So for Easter, how does this Easter support our mission? So let's create some cohesiveness between Easter, the event that is Easter, and the mission that God has called us to. Let's just make sure there's a connection there that we can hopefully take advantage of as people experience Easter at our church. And how will we follow up with attendees after Easter? Let's think ahead of time. What does that look like at our church? Dennis, I'm going to kick it over to you. This is kind of the setup. So why don't you jump into a little bit more of the tactics of how we can do this?
So the first thing, what Michael talked about as it relates to, knowing exactly who you're trying to reach, right? And one of the reasons why we put together the resources that we do at for churches, Church Brand God, Hallelujah Social. The reason why we put together these resources is with that goal in mind, is to help you reach more people, but not just reaching people for the sake of reaching people. It's reaching people so then we can take them on the discipleship journey, right? So as it relates to Easter, once we start planning Easter, I think the first thing that we have to think about as it relates to who can we reach, I think the first audience that we can think about is the people that have been to our church that past year or any time that year or the prior year before. So that's anybody that has been there, but maybe they don't show up on the typical Sunday. I believe what the average is 1.4 or something like that the average person attends church in the US. Crazy. But that's the first person we're reaching. The first person we're reaching is the people that have been to the church. Now, the second person, or the second kind of target that we're going after, is we're going after new people, right? And what we know, and all the statistics and all the data shows this to us, that people, they are more receptive to coming to church on Easter, on Christmas. And that's why we make a big deal about these things, is because we have an opportunity, our ministries, they have an opportunity to reach and connect with more people. And that's why we start off with some of this collateral, the screen, the social, the flyer, the poster, the banner. Because one of the things that I believe is that what good design actually does is good design captures attention, right? That's the first thing that we want to do, is we want to capture attention. Now, once we have that attention, it's now, how do we take that attention and point them to Jesus via the service or the event that we're putting together? So that would be the first thing. As when we talk about the target audience, it's we're reaching people who, one, have been to the church, and two, who have some association with somebody that goes to the church, right? And then and the reason why we structured this out the way that we did, when we talk about what should you be doing before, what should you be doing during, and what should you be doing after, is because we're trying to take people on a journey from them being a stranger to a spectator to a participator, and ultimately to become a collaborator. And that's pretty much the discipleship journey. Michael, you want to chime in on that a little bit more?
Yeah, actually, I'll punt it over to Brandon. Brandon, what is your experience as you thought through some of this, the win, the audience? What are some of your thoughts?
Absolutely. So one of the projects that my wife and I went through with Michael was we identified who are the people within our church that love our church, that are the most likely people to invite someone to a service like this. And we've kind of found is they often invite people from their own spheres of influence. And we want to champion that. So they have kids on the soccer team. How do we make it easy for someone who's going to invite someone to our Easter service to invite their friends? So is it a invite card? Is it social media? And I would say it's all of them. And what we have found is, as we've easily resourced people to invite their friends to come to church, we saw their friends start coming to church. And if Easter was an event that they felt that they could invite their friends to, that their friends would be glad that they came to, they would also be more likely to invite them to church. And then there was the second play, which was how did we let people who would be invited through Google, through social media, to come out to our church. And what about the person that came to our church 3 months ago or 4 months ago, but the season of life that they were in just was busy and they just haven't come to church? Not because they were upset, they just haven't come. So how do we reach out to them? So we found an internal mailer. So anyone that's in our database has ever come to our church. So we're touching 3 different places. Hey, the people that have come to our church that we haven't seen in a while, and we're just going to send them a postcard in the mail inviting them to come to church. 2, how do we equip the person in our church that will invite someone to come to our Easter services and create an experience for them and for their family and their friends' family that will be enjoyable? And 3, how do we let someone who's never been to our church aware that Easter is going to be great and invite them to our church? So what you see here in that first tier, we run all of that. How do we make it easy for people to know that this is happening and how it's going to go when they show up? And then we'll talk about later in the call, I think, how do we get those people that came on Easter to come back?
Yeah, excellent. So let's jump into our tier system on the right here. You might have noticed that on our screen. So tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Basically, we're just identifying ahead of time what are we going to do to promote Easter, and we just created some list of options in advance. So for your church, this might look a little different, but this might be a good starting point for you to think of. But we want to make sure we hit digital and print media so that we're covering both bases. We just want to make sure, like Brandon said, like people respond in different ways, and we just want to make sure we do that. So Dennis, he's already put together some designs. We want to show you practically what this starts to look like as we look at design. So we're thinking about the audience, and from there, we're trying to design something that will reach them. It's not about our preferences. It's not about my favorite color or whatever it is as a designer, or even you as a pastor. It's, hey, what is our audience going to respond to? And let's make sure we design something that's good for them. So let's just kind of get practical right now. Dennis, I'm actually going to put you on as the host right now and have you share your screen, and then you can walk us through maybe some of the design concepts and where those designs came from. There we go. Should be good now.
All righty. Let me get this going here.
If you guys have questions, go ahead and drop those in the chat, and we'll take a look at those, and then we can come back and answer those towards the end here.
All right. So yeah, so one of the things that you'll always hear from me is the importance of good design, right? Now, the thing about design is subjective. That's why whenever we design multiple different styles depending on who you're trying to reach, right? Because not every single piece of design is going to resonate with your audience, right? So one of the first designs we have here is more of a modern style design. So we have these colors, it's very bright, it's very fun. So this is one example. Now you might be looking at this and you can say, oh, this doesn't really fit for my church. But you can see one of the things that we start with is the initial concept. Now from that, so what we're looking at here is this is a screen design. Now from this initial concept, then we would create the screens for that Sunday. So it's one cohesive look. So this is a welcome screen. It simply says welcome, and it says home isn't a place, it's a people, right? When I design, I like to throw in those little touches because messaging is very important, right? When somebody is reading something that's on a sign or on a screen, there's actually something that they're processing, right? Now we have all of these different concepts and we have all these different screens, but this is only just one of the concepts that we have. So here we have a more modern concept, but if I switch over right here, you'll see now this is a little bit more of a trendy concept. So this is for maybe churches that are probably trying to reach a younger audience. I would say like the mid 30s range. So again, you can see it's a lot of white space, but still the design is different, but the messaging is the same, right? And that's what we try to do when we try to put together these designs. Now we don't stop there. We have one more design to show you, and this is more of a classic, I would say, concept, right? So you see kind of like the traditional Easter colors, you see some flowers, And then on the upper right here, you might not be able to see it well from your screen, but again, we have some messaging, right? We have some verses. And then from these designs, we then take these initial concepts and we create multiple variations. And the thing about Canva is that's when we do our designs on Canva, it makes it very easy for a church, for a volunteer to do these great designs and then have multiple concepts. So for example, the design that we're looking at right here, this is for a poster, right? Same thing with these. So what we do is we take these initial concepts and then we do it in a way where it can be translated multiple different ways, right? But what we're trying to do for Easter is we're trying to create one cohesive look. And with that one cohesive look, we're going to translate that to our, translate that to social, and then we're going to translate that through print.
All right, that's excellent. So Dennis can, yeah, you just kind of scroll through there. That's great. So Canva, one of the things to point out is that this is done in Canva. So for our clients, again, Dennis and I both serve different churches around the country to do stuff. And what we found is that although Illustrator and Photoshop can do really great things, we just want to set up the resizes and all that stuff so that that can be done very easily. So Canva is a great tool that does that. So I'm not sure if you know Canva, why don't you give me like a wave or something, or put Canva in the chat. Just let me know if that's something that you guys have used. If not, we'd love for you to check out Canva. It's a great tool for churches to be able to create designs very quickly. But as you can see, Dennis is showing you designs here that look really good. They're not like, you know, kind of cheap looking designs. They look really good, and you can make some great changes to it. Yeah, that's great. Dennis is going through some changes right now. And there's a resize option. There's also a Canva Pro that allows you to, in fact, Brandon, why don't you take a moment, just explain Canva Pro? And I know you have that for Vibrant Church. Oh, you're muted, Brandon. Try there you go.
Thank you. So Canva Pro is like the premier version of Canva, but Canva has a free non-for-profit option. So it's Canva Pro is supposed to be $50 a month, but we use it every single day for free. And it's very easy to get approved by them. You just have to show your tax document that you are a local church. And then you can go in there and create teams and have different people and share ideas. And it's a live document. So multiple people can be working on the same image at the same time. And what we have found, which is great for Canva, is it's a way for us to take a design like what Dennis makes and make it our own. So we might take one of his initial designs and then create 6 or 7 different variations for different weeks for a series, or like here for Easter, we just add our church name. Very easy. I'm not a designer. I couldn't navigate. I know the very basics. Like I can change the words in Canva, but that's about it. But they provided designs for us, for someone like me, that I could still win. I can add my church address. I could change out our service times. If I wanted to change the script on the backside of an invite card to something that I liked better, it was already set up for me in a way that I can win very easily.
Excellent. So I'm going to kind of reclaim the host here. Dennis has been clicking around.
Hey, Michael, you're not sounding right. It sounds like you have a loop going on.
Yeah, we're getting a little bit of a choppiness on your end here, Michael. Let's see if we can get it fixed. Technical difficulties. Praise the Lord.
All right, is that better?
Oh, that's perfect.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Excellent. Gotta love the technology side of things here. All right.
Right, that's right.
Let's jump in. So again, on the right hand side with our overview here, we've got the different resizes listed out for you, just to be able to see some options of what's available. But again, for your church, it might be low. So let's jump into the day of the event, and let's just take a look at a strategy for that. So once you've decided what promotions you're going to be doing, printed and digital, then let's go ahead and on the day of have a plan to have great hospitality, a clear call to action to their next step. Let's go ahead and capture information of any new people and make sure we have a good system in place to do that. Again, that could be connect cards, QR codes, maybe there's a sign up of some kind, a lot of different ways to do that, but let's just think about it and not just take it for granted. Let's capture video and photography at Easter. It's probably the best time that we're going to get great photos and videos. So if you needed to hire somebody like a wedding photographer, an event photographer, like do it for Easter and make sure you don't miss that moment. It's going to be great for your social media for the next 6 months or even longer. Capturing video as well is going to be great, like B-roll type video footage of people in the church and the atmosphere, those type of things. Visuals are huge when it comes to letting people know about your church. So use Easter and take advantage to capture that. Video especially is a really big deal in today's culture, especially on social media. In fact, Dennis, I know can get on a soapbox and unpack that quite a bit, but we won't do that right now. That's a different webinar. Also, we want to make sure we're posting on social media and maybe live or reels, all the different options that we have. Let's just make sure we have somebody in place to take care of that. And also promote the next step. Make sure we have next steps in place. Could be a sermon series, could be Mother's Day. In fact, that's what we recommend. That's one of the strategies that we recommend is start with like a Mother's Day. It's the third most attended day of the year when it comes to church attendance on average. And have a great plan in place for Mother's Day, and then invite people to come back to church. These are people that come, a lot of them that come on Easter, they only come a couple times a year. So have another big thing that you can invite them to, in addition to like another series. So Brandon, let me go to you on this one. Why don't you unpack what this has looked like for Vibrant?
Yeah, so for me right now in our game, I have Michael and Dennis that are working on creating our graphics for all the different tiers or layers of promotion. So the goal is end of this week to the first of next week, we're going to order anything that needs to be printed to get ready for Easter. And then the last weekend of March, which is 2 weekends before Easter, we're going to be giving out door hangers. We're going to be giving out invite cards to our church and having them pray over who they're going to be inviting. So we're making it easy for them to invite their friends. That same weekend, we're going to do an internal mailer where we're going to do our own postcard stamps and our own postcard addresses. And we're just going to put addresses on those mailers, and we're going to send that out. So 2 weeks beforehand, they get a piece of mail saying, hey, we'd love to see you at Easter specifically. And then we're going to start running some social media ads promoting our Easter, or a plan your visit, which we have set up on our website, and they can plan their visit for Easter Sunday. And if we know that they're coming ahead of time, it makes a better experience for them because we have the information that we need to go ahead and get their kids in our kids check-in system, which makes check-in happen a lot quicker, especially on Easter. But it's that tiered, layered approach. How am I trying to get people who've never heard of my church to come, which is social media, advertising, and Google? How do I leverage the people in our church that do want to invite people to come? Well, I'm going to put great resources in their hands. And then what about the people that just haven't been to our church in a while, getting them to come to that event? And as I've run that play right in that 2-week window, start doing big promotion around Easter. And then on Easter Sunday, we do talk about Mother's Day a little bit, but we want to try to get guests to come back. Guests will come back before Easter. Your Christmas and Easter people might not come until Mother's Day again, but I want to get those guests that tried us out for the first time, like, oh, I really like this church. How do I get them to come back? Well, the week after Easter, I am doing a sticky series that will cause them, that we're promoting on Easter. Hey, you're going to want to come back next week. Like, Easter was amazing, but the next series that we're starting next week, it's going to change your life. And I'm doing a series on faith, about having an audacious faith. leading after Easter, trying to make it so, hey, we had all these people show up to Easter. We had more than 200% show up compared to a normal Sunday. Now, how do I get them engaged into the life of our church? So that's kind of the playbook that we've ran, and that's where we've seen just some really great results. And where Michael and Dennis have been so helpful is they provided those high quality graphics that worked well with our church culture to really champion keeping people motivated about inviting to Easter. And someone that gets something in a piece of mail they're getting mail from Google, which means my look needs to match the quality of what they're already getting in the mail.
So brand is about building trust. It's about how do we help people to trust us enough to take next steps with us. So our visuals matter. People judge a book by its cover, and we have to pay attention to that, or else they won't even come to experience the gospel that we have for them. So we need to make sure we have a really great looking message, but the message itself needs to be great as well. So let's make sure we really spend some time crafting that and getting it right. So I know Brandon's really big on that. Whenever we talk about some things, we just want to make sure it's the right messaging. And yeah, we're going to make it look good, but let's make sure that messaging is great. Dennis, any final thoughts on the day of Easter that you can think of to make that really great?
Yeah, so the day of Easter is super important. I think you guys hit on a lot of incredible points as it relates to hospitality. So just my background as well, I also served as the executive pastor at my church plant. And one of the things I would tell our team is that the people that's in the parking lot, the people that's in the connect corner in those areas, they're preaching a sermon way before the pastor opens their mouth. Right. So there's a lot that they're saying by, how they're approaching people. I always make the point of one of the things in terms of hospitality is the goal is to make connections with people, but to also make connections for people. If you can get your team to do those two things, I think it would be a really great win. Michael touched on the importance of videography and photography on Easter. Now, I will tell you, please pay attention to that point, right? I have been to churches where I went there for a Sunday, and that Sunday where I got a bunch of photo and video, that was months of content. In fact, one church, I was able to get them so much content that they used that piece of content and never had to reuse photos or videos for about a year and a half, right? So that Sunday is super important. It's really content gold. That's what I would call it. Now, if you don't know yet, this is a whole nother webinar, but the importance of collecting content is because we're using digital to not just promote events and provide information. We're using digital to capture attention and point people to Jesus, right? It's fulfilling the Great Commission, but we're moving that online. And then the last thing is, as it relates to the call to action, one of the things I always say is people need a rope to swing on, right? One of the things that I recommend for my clients is to do a baptism Sunday the following Sunday. I find that works really well if you want this big corporate thing for people to celebrate. Having a baptism Sunday the next following Sunday, or maybe your next steps class, those are two great actionable steps that you can take to really make that day a really good day. But I would say focus on one, how your team is that day in terms of their hospitality. So are they making connections with people? Are they making connections for people? Photo and video, if you're able to hire somebody, great. But if you're not, just identify one person with an iPhone that you can just, that whole day they're taking pictures. They're taking pictures of people. They're taking videos, right? That whole day, because it is content gold. That content will be used to later on point people to Jesus. So those are really my main points as it relates to the day of Easter.
So just to recap, we're going to wrap this up here in just a moment. So again, if you have questions, feel free to jump on here in just a moment with your questions. You can put them in the chat as well. Just to recap, our goal is to help you double your attendance on Easter. So the first part of what we were talking about today is really going to help you to do that. How do you mobilize the church to invite people that have been there within the last year to come back on Easter? So internal mailers, invite cards that you're handing out in the service, prayer moments where you're praying over that invite card, all of those things, graphics around the property online that are letting people know service times and next steps for the Easter at your church. We just want to make sure all those things are very, very clear. When you're clear about it, it's not just a promotion, but it's it's a spiritual moment where you're just leaning into it as a leader, as a pastor. Then we get to see great results like Brandon's talking about, where we mobilize the church and invite those people that have been there within the last year to come back on Easter. Then we want to make sure that it's not just about the large crowd on Easter. It's about how do we get growth? How do we create momentum out of Easter so that we see growth long term? So we get people to stick and not just disappear till Christmas, right? Let's just make sure we get that done right. So that's where the Easter day of comes into play. Now we do have the after Easter evaluate. So basically, two big ideas: evaluate and celebrate. Evaluate and celebrate. We won't go too deep into that one because I want to honor your time. I do want to make mention of a couple things, but before we start to wrap things up. But all the designs that Dennis has shown to you today, we're going to make those available to you. We were thinking, how can we add value to people on this call? So typically we would design those for $500 for the set, or upwards of that, maybe $1,000, depending on how many different things you would want if we're designing those as kind of one-off things. So we're going to provide that as a download. And again, these are Canva files where you can make the changes to make it your own for your church. Put your logo in there, put your information in there. There's 3 different sets. So we're going to make those available to you at $37. You'll also get this playbook that I have on my screen. So that'll come with you with the download. So our hope is that it just makes it so much easier for you to win this Easter by providing those graphics. You take the strategies that we're sharing, apply them, use the graphics to move further, faster, get those prints done. You probably have the rest of this week and a little bit of next week to get those prints ordered. So hop on it. The good news is that you'll have the entire kit so that you can get it done very quickly using Canva. And you can get that out there. Again, if you have any questions, please let us know. We just want to make sure you knew about that we're going to make that available to you, and that you can download. There's 3 different graphics, 3 different looks that Dennis showed you. There was the kind of the modern look that was kind of down the middle, I guess you can say, the trendy, that's a little bit more youthful, and then that classic look. Hopefully one of those is going to hit the mark for you and serve you very well. So make sure you take advantage of that. But just real quick before we kind of open it up to questions, let's do touch on the evaluate and celebrate part of things. So let's make sure we take a moment to pause after Easter and write down some notes of what went well, what didn't work. Let's write some notes for next year. This is such a big mistake that I've made in the past of like, hey, not pausing long enough to learn from this year. So let's just make sure we do that. And let's go back to that win. Did we achieve our win? It's okay to say, no, we didn't, or it's okay to say, yeah, we did, and here's how we can do it better next year. Also, let's celebrate as a staff. Sometimes the baptism thing could be a great thing for the church to celebrate, like having baptism, like Dennis was talking about, maybe the week after, or maybe a couple weeks after that. And then as a ministry level, kids ministry, maybe usher greeters and all that stuff. How can we celebrate as a team? Because there's a lot of energy that goes into that. So Brandon, let me start with you. Any thoughts on this this final piece of evaluating and celebrating?
Yeah, John Maxwell says the best teacher is not experience, it's evaluated experience. And the only way you can evaluate experience is if you went into the experience with an intended outcome. So he gives us a great illustration of a Charlie Brown cartoon where Charlie Brown is shooting an arrow at a fence, and Lucy shows up to see Charlie Brown shooting the arrow at the fence, and she notices that every time he shoots the arrow, he goes over to the arrow and he draws the target around it. And Lucy asks Charlie, "Hey, Charlie Brown, why do you draw the target after you shoot it?" He says, "Well, this way I get hit the bullseye every time." And what I found working in churches is that's often what we end up doing, where we walk out of an event not identifying what was the win to identify the target. Did we actually hit it? we just end up saying, well, we'll shoot the arrow and then we'll kind of determine the win around it later. And that might not be the right win that we were trying to have for the experience. So for us on Easter, our goal is to build trust with our people that we can create an Easter experience for their lost family, their lost friends, and their neighbors who maybe just haven't been in church since COVID, to come back to and have an experience that it adds value to their life and is the gospel and is life transformation. Did we present the gospel? Were there people at Easter that gave their life to Jesus? And what is the follow-up process with them afterwards? Hey, did we clearly communicate, hey, we want you to come back next week for the new series, Audacious Faith? And then the next week, did those guests actually come back? So for us, we have a really clear target. Hey, we want to have more than twice as many people come to Easter. We want to be hearing stories about people inviting their friends and they came. We want to be hearing stories of, hey, I got your piece of mail, and the mail I haven't been in a few months. It's my first Sunday back. We want to hear stories of like, it was my first time here at your church. This was great. And then it was, hey, the next week, did some of those people come back to the series so we can start to begin the process of integrating them into our church and discipling them one step at a time. But until we're clear on, hey, this is the target, we're just guessing. And so for us on Easter, what is the draw for double? Well, we're going to have a fun Easter service where we're going to give away donuts and have a photo booth, and we're going to have a fun family experience. And there's going to be Easter egg hunts going on inside of the classroom, and we're presenting the gospel in every one of our rooms, but the baby room. And are there people taking those spiritual next steps to help them in their journey of knowing God?
So if you have any questions, let us know. If not, I've learned through just getting to know Dennis and Brandon that they have a lot to say. So I'll turn them loose if you don't have any questions. But put a question mark in the chat, or put your question itself in the chat. You'll notice in the chat right now, I put a link to the Easter kit. If that's going to be helpful to you, click that link. We hope it's a blessing to you. We hope it helps you get further faster, and we hope that the value it provides to you, that you get to see tremendous results this Easter because of those resources. Also, if you are on this call live, you have access to the playbook we've been talking through. So there's a download link where you can get that playbook. Feel free to grab that, and again, hopefully it guides you through your Easter preparation. If you're not on the call, you don't get that. Sorry if you're watching the replay, but if you get one of those kits, we'll make sure we get that to you inside the kit. But if you're on the call, feel free to click that download link right now. You can get that PDF. So Dennis, why don't you take a moment and unpack the evaluation and celebration piece?
Yeah, I don't have too much. I think Brandon did a great job of covering that. One of the ways that, and I've worked within teams in many organizations, I've scaled a nonprofit that had about 1 club in South Florida to 1,000 clubs across the US. So the evaluation piece is super important. It's something that you think you can just skip over, but no, it's super important. It's important that you're seeing, one, how can you improve, right? Because if you're not improving, then you're going to stay stuck, right? We always want to be building after each event. So one of the practical tools that you can do that is a SWOT analysis. So this is something that I just do with my teams, right? The SWOT analysis just stands for what are the strengths, the weaknesses, some of the opportunities, or some of the threats, right? One of the things that I did is every Sunday I would have team leaders actually do SWOT analysis with their teams, right? So in our culture, we had these team huddles, and they would do the SWOT analysis, and the team leaders would then send those SWOT analysis back to me. So then now you'll be able to know from every single team, okay, what are the areas we need to improve? But then we don't just stop there, right? We need to celebrate, right? And I just find that when you celebrate, you create a positive culture, and you create a rhythm where it almost make like people remember like why it was worth it, right? Because that day it could be chaotic at sometimes. At least if you work with some in the church world, or in some of the churches that I've worked with, sometimes some days some things could be chaotic. The screen might go out, some things may happen. But when we pull everything back and we begin to celebrate, everybody's reminded exactly why we do what we do. So that's all I have on that.
All right, excellent. In the chat below, I've also put in there a link to Canva Pro, the nonprofit. So if you have not gotten that for your church, that link right there will take you right to it. I believe you have to submit. I guess Brandon or Dennis, did you guys say there's like a document of some kind to apply?
Yeah, you just have to. I believe it's just the IRS document that states that you're a 501c3. And I think that's pretty much it. Now, I have heard from some people like they were denied it first for whatever reason, and then they just resent that document again, and they were able to get Canva for free. I'll also include our email on here, that if you have any trouble as it relates to understanding any of the designs that you purchase, you can just send us an email at hello@canvaforchurches.com, and then we will respond to that just to make sure that you're well taken care of.
Yeah, just to let you know, we set up this this webinar and then the resources and everything fairly quickly. We're like, man, we got to help some people out with Easter. We've been slammed like prepping stuff for Easter for different churches that we serve. And we're like, man, let's just do something cool for the kingdom and provide something. So if something doesn't work, there's a lot of plumbing that goes behind on the back end of it to be able to provide a resource like this. And man, I'm hoping we got it right. But if it doesn't work, use that email that Dennis just described, and we'll make sure we get you what you need. One thing to hit on too, just as a bonus, we didn't cover it in depth, but a landing page is a good idea on your website. So your website really is the front door to your church. And we just need to make sure that the website represents you well and lets people know their next steps. One of the great tactics in marketing world is to have a landing page specific for the audience that you are trying to reach out to. So if you're promoting Easter at your church, you should have an Easter specific landing page. So has details and information that only is for the Easter service experience on that landing page. So whatever graphic they see on social media, it should be represented on that landing page. So it should have the same look and feel, the same language, all the details they would need to know to come to the church should be on that landing page. You can also put in there, it might be redundant with what's on your website, but that's okay. Put in there like any forms that helps people to check in. Brandon was talking about that earlier, like you can check your kids in ahead of time. Anything you want to promote that's like a feature of the church, you can also put lower on that landing page. So if your church is like amazing at groups, like you have all kinds of amazing small groups, you can actually lower on the page, maybe include some of that of like, hey, we've got some great opportunities for you to connect here at the church. But the very top of that page should have a great look and feel that represents Easter at your church, all the details, information. If you're doing an Easter egg hunt, that might be a good idea too. By the way, another side note with Easter egg hunts, those are usually good to attract young families. So that might be something that you throw in the mix. Looks like we have a couple questions coming in. Let's say that your church worship team was not available for Easter. What would you have in place instead? Brandon, you're an expert. Come on, man, jump in on this one. What do you think? Brandon would just sing at our church. He would be the one to
Yeah, that is not true. I would not be singing. They wouldn't even let me. So two answers to that one. One, there is still time. We have at times paid musicians specifically to come in to kind of fill in some of those gaps. We actually just did one 2 weeks ago where we didn't have a drummer. We just wanted to have a drummer just for our culture. It just is ideal. So we ended up paying a couple $100s to have a drummer for a unique week. But I gave our worship leader permission, hey, because this is Easter, if we do need to spend a little bit of money to have a drummer so we can have an extra guitar player to just make Easter that extra, like, hey, we want to treat Easter like it's the Super Bowl because it's the Super Bowl. Like this is where the most amount of lost people are going to be, and it's worth the effort. Also, we're networkers where there was a week where our entire worship team had COVID, like the entire worship team had COVID. And I had a friend of mine whose church wasn't having service that weekend, and he gratefully sent his team 45 minutes and they led worship for us. So I would lean into some of those relationships and see if there are some places where you can help fill. But people are being scheduled for Easter right now. So we already had one person say that they couldn't serve with us on Easter because we scheduled too late. So if you haven't scheduled Easter yet, I would highly encourage you to go ahead and schedule for Easter. And that's across all your teams, not just worship.
Awesome, Josh. I hope that was helpful. If you have any follow-ups with that, feel free to put it in the chat. Dennis, here's one for you. Nicholas is asking, do you need permission from Easter visitors to use their photos and video during the year?
Yeah, so in the past, we've like, at least in my church, we've never really asked for permission, essentially. So I can tell you what I've seen work very well at some churches. So some churches may have a sign that will say something along the lines of like, please note that you will be photographed. So I think that's the most practical thing that you can do to be able to use their photos, right? Basically saying, hey, if you're in this area, we're gonna take a photo of you, right? Because it's probably not realistic, depending on your church size, to get photo release forms and all that stuff from everybody that attends. So to answer, it's just you can. I've never done it in the past, and all the church plants that I've worked with, I've never told them to do it, and I don't think we've ever had an issue. But if you do want to take that extra layer of precaution, then I would just recommend putting a sign up somewhere saying, "Hey, we will be photographing."
Yeah, just to add to that, I usually do photography at our church or maybe some other church I might be at. So typically people, if they don't want to be photographed, they'll come over and say something to me. I'm like, hey, please don't take a photo. And then I'm totally cool, of course, not to do that. So it's same thing with kids. We want to be cautious with kids. If we're taking photos of kids, typically we're just going to take photos of kids that are kind of known. So for people that go to the church that are the photographer, hopefully they can identify families that are just regulars at the church. We try to be cautious about that as we post things on social media, to use kids that are families we know real well within the church. So again, the sign is a good idea. I've seen that at some very large churches where I've even seen it at a stadium, like you might go to a professional sports stadium. They'll have signs that say, hey, while you're on the premises, your image may be used. So I don't know what the language is. I'm not saying that that's the right language, but you could put some signs up and just let people know, hey, we do take photography and video, and your image may be used while you're on the premises. And you could even put another note. If you do not want to be used, then please notify guest services or something along those lines. All right. Any other questions? Go ahead and drop those in. We'll start to wrap it up though for today. Thank you for jumping on this call. Just a little bit of updates for you. Dennis and I have both been collaborating in the last 6 months together. We both have different companies that deal with media for churches. And so we're kind of putting together something new called For Churches. It's not either one of our thing, but we're just saying, hey, let's do something together that we can serve the kingdom and provide some great resources. So you might be seeing some communication from us coming from For Churches. In fact, it started with us doing Canva for churches, where we just said, hey, what if we just provided a ton of Canva designs and provided them for free? So people can just get them, download them for like all the church things that you would normally do. So if you haven't checked out canvaforchurches.com, make sure you check that out. There's probably a couple hundred designs on there at this point that you can get just for free. Just download them from canva.com. And that's one of our things that we started off a while ago. And then now we're going to take it to the next level and begin to work with Brandon a little bit as well, too, to provide resources for churches. And it's called For Churches. So hopefully that's easy for you to remember. So keep your eye out for that if you're aware of either one of our brands, and just we want to serve you really well. Also, feel free to send us any messaging about, hey, any questions or comments you might have. So we'll be available for that. Mother's Day is coming up as well, so we'll do another Mother's Day webinar, kind of like this. So be aware that that's coming up to help you win at Mother's Day. It's kind of overlooked by a lot of churches, but it really is a great opportunity. All right, so let's wrap it up. I don't see any more questions coming in. Dennis and Brandon, let's do any final thoughts you might have just regarding Easter, and like any closing thoughts you might have just to add value to the audience.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why I use Michael and Dennis is because I want to make sure that my personal energy is going into the right places. And for me, that's not making unique designs for our Easter promotions. It's with people. And so for me to use a resource like Canva for Churches, which really equips our team for free, and then I get to provide with them already great design that they can just customize and make their own, just creates an easy win for us as a church. And I just highly recommend working with Michael and Dennis. But let's make Easter great, because our nation needs Jesus, and Jesus is the answer to our nation. So let's make it great.
Yeah, that's so good. And my final thought is like that's exactly why we do what we do. That's why we put out these resources. That's why we put together these these webinars. It's because we just want to help the church reach more people, right? Reach people with the life-changing message of the gospel. And one of the things for you to just remember as you probably just go on this journey with 4 churches is that the main thing that we believe is that our message will never change, but our methods, they have to adapt, right? So we just want to be that central place where as things adapt, you adapt with us and you get some guidance. So check out all of our free resources. Let's make Easter incredible. Let's equip your team so they have what they need to really make Easter a really awesome Sunday for your church.
All right, so we're going to send out the replay here in the next day. So be aware of that. It'll come to your inbox. You'll get the replay, and then also the links to the resources that we talked about today, including those kits that you can purchase. Thanks again for joining us. We appreciate an hour of your time today. We know that's a sacrifice, so we appreciate that. And let us know if you need anything. And let's advance to God's kingdom together. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.
Bye, everybody.